Hello and welcome to the Tour Report from Secret Golf. Well, we are in the midst of the FedEx Cup Playoffs. This week it's the BMW Championship at Olympia Fields in Chicago. But Elk, before we get onto that, what about Lucas Glover? Back-to-back wins. He won the Wyndham, then he won the FedEx St. Jude Championship. And before the Wyndham, he was 112th in the FedEx Cup rankings. He has now propelled himself all the way up to number 4. Like, what a run of form for Lucas Glover. It's unbelievable.
We were talking on the show last week. We did a highlight, Diane, as you remember, between Scotty Scheffler, who is ranked approximately 60th in the field in putting, and Lucas Glover found himself now also ranked in the 60th area in putting. And we talked about which one is more confident, which one would win a putting contest between Scheffler, arguably one of the top player in the world, and Lucas Glover. And almost everyone I talked to last week said, well, Lucas Glover would win a putting contest right now against Scotty Scheffler. And he did it again. I mean, all those yips that he had with the short putter, now he's gone to a long one. I talked to my friend Jeff Mangum, putting expert. All that rewiring, it doesn't transfer up into this area, so he doesn't have all that scar tissue that he dealt with for all those years. Yeah. And Lucas Glover has always been regarded as one of the superior ball strikers. Always. Putting, chipping, mental game, and let him down, mainly because of the yips, caused a big mental problem, and rightly so. However, it looks to me now that it's not a big deal with him. He's very calm on the greens. Yes, he's making a lot of putts, but not crazy. If you look at it, he hardly misses a fairway, hardly misses a green. He's playing better tee to green than almost anyone out there. And the putting's just sort of doing what the top players do. They just don't make tons of mistakes with the putter.
And the confidence. I mean, as you say, this guy battled the putting yips for years. They showed a clip on the coverage on Sunday of his putting from years ago. I don't know what year it was, but he moved the putter so much he almost missed the ball. And like, it's wild to think that this only happened before the Rocket Mortgage in Detroit. And when you look at the results since then, he finished 4th at the Rocket Mortgage, then 6th at the John Deere, 5th at the Barbasol, 5th at the Barracuda, missed the cut at the 3M Open, came back and won the Wyndham, and then won the FedEx St. Jude, the first playoff event. So for Lucas Glover, I mean, it's I loved Amanda Balionis, Amanda Renner on the coverage had asked, like, if I had said to you at the start of June that you were going to go back-to-back wins and be up at number 4 heading into the BMW Championship, what would you have said? And he was like, I would have paid for a therapist. Like, you needed help. So just a incredible transformation for him, you know, a life-changing stretch.
Not quite life-changing because he is a US Open champion, so he's dealt with the top of the mountain before, Diane. So I think that's one of the things that's kept him so calm the last 2 weeks. He is such a gifted player. He just had this one really poor category in his game, putting, that was just almost, you know, bankrupted his potential playing on tour, almost got him off tour. But, you know, as I said, Lucas Glover, being given an opportunity, Diane, came from outside of the FedEx Cup completely into after Greensboro, and now finds himself sandwiched right up behind the big 3, we're calling it, Rahm, Scheffler, and Rory at number 4 in the FedEx Cup, with a real chance to take home $18 million in a couple of weeks.
Well, that's what I meant by life-changing, in that he's won close to $5 million in the last 2 weeks. I mean, it's the money in itself in the last 2 weeks. That changes your day-to-day life. There's no way around that. And the position that he's in right now, as you say, there's this huge chunk of change up for grabs at the Tour Championship next week. Where our producer has just given me a great stat here that he's the only one in the top 50 that played the Barracuda. We know that the Barracuda was the alternate field event opposite the Open. You know, Lucas Glover didn't even get in the Open, and that was only last month.
Never played a major championship this year and now is poised possibly. Zach Johnson, can we throw up a Ryder Cup up-to-the-date picture here? And let's see where Lucas Glover now sits there at number 16.
Wow.
As I said to you, Diane, last week when there was so much talk of Justin Thomas, and by the way, this whole playoff, Diane, I played the tour for 30 years. I am not a fan. We'll talk about it a little bit more. It is just completely, it's so hard to run a story around some of these guys. I think Lucas Glover, in a certain sense, is saving things so far. However, I said to you last week that Justin Thomas will now fade out of the picture. He may not. He may have some kind of a deal with Zach Johnson, or Zach has an idea that he wants him on the team. But Lucas Glover right there at number 16, Diane, I mean, would you dare not put him in front of Cam Young, who is number 50th in putting this week out of 50 guys playing this week at the BMW? Which one would you want on your Ryder Cup team currently?
I said this last week that I would pick Justin Thomas over Cameron Young. But then you have Lucas Glover in the equation, and I was doing some research on this, and we have Brooks Koepka as the only live guy who's on that list, because
he's the only guy that's automatic, but there should be some other live players considered here.
That's what I mean. Like, if you had to pick, say it was a toss-up between Bryson DeChambeau, who just shot 58 the other week, and Lucas Glover, who's just gone back-to-back, and who knows what he's going to do this week and next week, who would be your pick for the team?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, Zach Johnson has the most amount of picks of any person. I mean, this guy, if he can't pick a winning team, Diane, I hate to say it because you're on the receiving end of the European side. If he can't pick a team out of this 30 guys or 22 guys that he's got to pick from, it's ridiculous how stacked the U.S. team is, or potentially to be able to put these teams together. Yes, there is some form required. There is some pairings that are important. But look, there's some in-form U.S. players, Diane, currently.
Yeah, well, I saw something very interesting on Twitter that I loved today, because Brian Harman is obviously going to be an addition to the US Ryder Cup team for the first time. And someone made a great point that they were trying to picture who Brian Harman would play with. And maybe Lucas Glover is that guy.
I would think, Brian Harman could pretty much, after we saw his performance at the Open, he's a putting and chipping master. So could he play with a Bryson DeChambeau who smashes it down there a long way and gets up and down crazy? That would be interesting. I think, there's a couple of storylines in the Ryder Cup, Diane. There's sort of who's going to win it. We're all very interested in that, but also these pairings and how they fit together, and is that exciting in its own right as well. Of course, we know Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth been friends since they were little kids, and they played well together, a lot of passion and all that. But it doesn't matter if the guy's not playing any good. You got to play good as well.
Yeah. Okay, then, well, this is the final week that Ryder Cup points are allocated. And then after the Tour Championship, of course, we're going to find out who has made both of those teams. It's the European team. We're going to talk about a couple of the Euro guys this week for the BMW for sure. And you've got Rory, obviously, finished third last week as well. Jon Rahm didn't have a great week last week, but is still number one in the FedEx Cup standings. And then you go down that list. I mean, Tommy Fleetwood, Shane Lowry. We know, when you look at the world ranking points, a lot of these guys are going to be automatically in the team as well. Obviously, VIKTOR Hovland. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting to see who those extra guys are that are slotted in and why, what the reasoning is behind it.
Yeah, that's a tough look right there, what I'm looking at right there, because I don't know all those guys. And if I don't know them, nobody knows them. So it's going to be a young team. Could they do it? Could they pull it off and get everyone in Italy behind them? Yeah. I don't know. They're way behind in the bookies, I would think, right now.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. And we all said that last year. at Whistling Straits on the Sunday when it turned into a demolition of the European team. And you had said to me on the phone, you guys are going to have a tough time in 2 years in Italy. That's what we have on our side, is the fact that we're playing on home soil. But
don't want it to be that way for you, Diane, but you've lived a long stretch of all your great players, starting at the top with Poulter and Garcia and Westwood, all those guys. And before them was, Sebi and Olazabal and Faldo and Woosnam and Sandy Lyle. They're going to have runs, but right now, currently, as you know as well as anyone in sports, there's a run of American dominance on paper currently and probably in the world rankings. And you've got a bunch of youth that's coming along. Good opportunity for the young Europeans, but right now it's stacked in the wrong direction right now for you in Italy.
It's going to be a good opportunity for Robert McIntyre. He's going to be representing my home country, so I'm going to be right behind that. Okay, well, let's get on and talk about the FedEx Cup Playoffs, because we have 3 events. It was top 70. This week's the top 50 for the BMW Championship. And then the top 30 make it to Eastlake to play in the Tour Championship next week. FedEx Cup points are quadrupled. And whoever makes it into the top 30, obviously there's all the perks that go with that. Last place is guaranteed $500,000. So big money. There's a huge incentive to make it into the top 30. Obviously you get to play in the Masters, the Open, the US Open. I mean, you're pretty much guaranteed to play the PGA as well. So it's a big one. And last week we saw big movement from HIDEKI Matsuyama and Cam Davis, who moved from outside the top 50 into play this week. And you had picked Cam Davis as your guy who was going to make that move, and he did it.
He did indeed, Diane, and I'm going to pick him again. Early pick here, as he's outside of the top 30 currently to go into the top 30. But, I must say, I'm not that overly, thrilled with this playoff format, Diane. Last week we saw, the 1, 2, and 3 player. Rory played well, but, Scheffler and Rahm both way down the bottom of the field. They didn't even lose any spots. Not much volatility. The only 7 players moved in and out of the top 50. I predict this week, Diane, 1,550 points is what you're looking for to advance into the top 30. There will only be very small action. I'm not very impressed with this point system. I sort of feel like, look, let's just get to the top 30. Show me the Tour Championship. Show me who's winning. But now we've shrunk the field to 50 this week. All eyes will be on from 25th to 35th. That's where there's going to be a little bit of action. Everybody that's already in the top 18 is safe. They've already got 1,550 points. They're going to make it. So they all know that. So what are we looking at? Last week was a bit of a yawner for the course. Great story with Lucas Glover, birding the last hole and then, knocking out CANTLAY, one of the top players on the whole PGA Tour. This week, we go into a different style golf course. I'm sort of thinking, I'm glad we're going to a really top course, Diane, because we need something to spice this up.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be, a doomsday guy here, but I am this is pretty boring. I don't care how many stats the CBS can put up, Diane. There's just not enough volatility for me in this playoffs. What do you see?
I agree with you that there's not enough volatility. I wish there were more. And you know me, I love the storylines, and I really enjoyed the storylines from the Wyndham when guys were trying to get into the top 70 as opposed to the 125. And the 125 have got until the end of the calendar year to lock up their full tour cards for next year. So I love that. And then this week, I was watching it and I love the Lucas Glover storyline, obviously. It's great. And to see Patrick Cantlay, who is one of these guys that just, like Rory, comes alive at this time of year and loves the FedEx Cup Playoffs. He's won the last 2 BMW Championships. And yes, seeing Matsuyama and Cam Davis, who you had picked, that's exciting because I wanted to see them get into the 50. But yeah, I'm like, can we get there already? Can we get to the Tour Championship? And thank goodness that we're going to have a super tough course this week in Olympia Fields. And it's the second time it's hosted the BMW. when it hosted in 2020. Remember, we had that great drama between Jon Rahm and Dustin Johnson, and it was like blow for blow. And DJ made a long putt to take it to the playoff, and then Rahm made a 60-something footer to win, and it was just an amazing ending. They were both at 4 under par for the week to make it to the playoff. So we know that the scoring is going to be high. Only 5 players broke par for the week. Mark Leishman was 30 over at the end of Sunday. So that paints a picture of how this course is going to play. And I agree with you. You're not going to agree with me, and I don't mean it literally. But the course kind of has a major feel to it this week. And okay, the tournament itself and where we're at with the numbers doesn't, but the anticipation around the course has a kind of US Open PGA feel to it.
Yeah, and you know, the field average at Olympia Fields was 7 over. So you know, as a player, when you're going to a tournament like this, Diane, that it's going to be tough. And what makes it tough? You know, Olympia Fields, you've got to hit the fairway. Otherwise, you're going to make a bogey. There's all these drop-offs over different little cliffs and certain things on this course, dog legs, where you just literally can't play the course. And we saw 2 of the most dominant drivers of the golf ball in a playoff here 2 years ago. Talking about Dustin Johnson, power fade. Jon Rahm, power fade. Tony Finau was right there. Another bunch of long hitters. Joaquin Neiman was right there, power fade. So what does that tell me? It tells me, okay, I'm looking at the power fade. You know how much I've been on Jon Rahm all year. I'm probably not going to be off him. I'm giving you a tip here a couple of minutes before I give you my tip. I probably can't get off Jon Rahm. I still think I know he hasn't won the FedEx Cup. This tournament is such a yawner because 18 of the guys in the top 30 are already in it. And I just saw last week that Rahm and Scheffler played rubbish, and they didn't even move off 1 and 2. Okay, we got Glover right up there behind him. He got 2,000 points. But if Rahm wins this week or Scheffler plays well, Scheffler's not putting well, and that's a fact. He's 46 out of 50 guys in putting. Rory McIlroy is not too far behind him. But Rory, I told you last week, Rory's the most dangerous FedEx Cup player because he knows how to win this. He knows how to position himself. He did it again last week. He's got basically a hook stroke, putting stroke, looks terrible. And if I was on tour and I went over to look at it, I can just tell you he's not putting well and he's got a hook stroke. But there he was again, 3rd place, Rory McIlroy. He knows what he's doing. I'm not picking him this week, but this tournament, Olympia Fields, is a very, very difficult task indeed. 1 under per day was the playoff 2 years ago. I anticipate, talk to my sources, anticipate similar type of scoring this week. Plenty of rough, fast greens, all that. So what's going to happen? Not much, in my opinion, but we are here to tell you what we think is going to happen as far as this week.
And with the course, I love the fact that the opening hole is a par 5 and it's the easiest hole on the course. And then the hardest hole on the course is the 18th. So it's like, I think the scoring average for the first and the second hole were below par, and everything else was above par pretty much, apart from maybe 1 or 2 holes that were slightly under par. So yeah, and 18 playing as in 2020 it definitely played as the toughest. So we're going to have a lot of drama. 8 holes have water on them, 91 bunkers on the course. So that's going to be the biggest defense. And actually in 2020, the greens were ranked as the 2nd toughest on tour for that year. So
slopey pitch greens from back to front, hard approach shots. So driving is super premium, and long driving, straight driving, as we saw with Rahm and DJ, 2 power faders, the ball very straight. I've left out Scheffler. I've left out talking about Rory. I mean, Fleetwood is playing really well. Fleetwood's number 8 putter on the PGA Tour. He's ranked 8th this week in putting, but it never seems like Fleetwood makes a putt. And he was right there again last week. Been working with Butch Harmon. Butch Harmon's given him his blessing and said, look, son, you're hitting the ball as good as anyone out there. What is it going to take? I know Fleetwood's not on your board, Diane. Can Fleetwood do anything. What is going on with Fleetwood? And if he's going to
So
win Ryder Cup points, he's going to have to make some putts eventually.
I almost picked him and I had everything written out. I need to write out my arguments for why I'm picking these guys. And I was between two and I had Fleetwood written out and then I eventually went with the other guy. But we'll talk about him obviously. Because I've picked him so much, it's not just putting, it's Sunday. Like, come on. So we had a 26 footer on 18 on Sunday to make it to the playoff and it just missed it. And it was just it's been the story for him. I mean, he's been top 10 in 5 of his last 6 starts. He's played well at the last 2 BMW Championships. He's had a T8 and a T11. So up to number 10 in the FedEx Cup standings. It's all great for Fleetwood, but it's the putting woes and it feels like they're just amplified on a Sunday and it's crossing that line. I saw a great stat today. I can't remember the exact amount. I can look it up, but he's won the most money on tour without a win.
Yeah.
And it's still wild to think that Tommy Fleetwood has not won on the PGA Tour.
As good as he plays, there's some outside pressure now from himself. I think now he should have birdied the last hole in regulation in Canada. Nick Taylor, of course, homegrown favorite there in Canada, knocked him out there in the playoff time with a 50-footer. I'm not even sure this should be called the playoffs. What are they playing off? There is no playoff. You are rewarded so much, Diane. The tour is rewarding the play during the year so much that you almost can't get knocked out. And we saw that last week with Rahm and Scheffler. They did not move off 1 and 2, and they played terrible last week. We saw one guy jump up, and that was the winner, Lucas Glover, who jumped up into the 4th position. But this system is rewarding the guys that play well during the year. When you think of a playoffs and you think of football and the 16th seed plays the first and they knock them out, there's no knockout here. We're not knocking out anybody. 18 guys are going to right through, no worries. Next week, top 18, they've already got their points. So very little churn rate. I don't like this system. We're going to have to get on this call next week, and we're going to have to explain to you a whole nother system, because the winner, the leader of this point race at the end of this week, gets a handicap. He goes into the last event with a handicap over everybody else. So that's a whole nother story.
And then maybe what we should do, because we are going to have a little bit of a break, we've got a few things to discuss. Maybe we should think, like, what's the alternative? So should it be that at the end of the regular season, that if you have made it into the top 70, then everything's zero? Like, everyone's on a level playing field for the 3 playoff events. Like, is that a fair way to do it?
Well, the only way you could do it is if Jon Rahm and Scheffler and Rory were up top, and then you were 70th, and you had actually, like football, and you had to play them in a match. I'm not sure that's fair either, because I'm not sure it is or not. I don't know. I mean, they've changed this system so many times. I don't know if that's fair, an 18-hole knockout for the whole show.
Well, let's think about it, and it's a show that we can do, and I'm sure
my job.
People have their opinions. Yeah, exactly. I'm glad it's not.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Well, let's get into our picks. Patrick Cantlay, another one that we kind of mentioned in passing there, but he lost in the playoff to Lucas Glover. Cantlay has won the last 2 BMW Championships, obviously won the FedEx Cup 2 years ago as well.
Course, this one, of course,
Yep. But he's going for the BMW three-peat. And last time the BMW was held here, as we said, in 2020, it was Jon Rahm who was the winner. So let's get into our picks. We'll do an outright favourite, a one to watch, and then a dark horse. My odds are like all over the place this week.
Dark horse, there's no such thing as a dark horse, and this one is someone that's outside the top 30 that we want to see jump in.
Yes, and my guy's 80-1, so he's not 100 miles off.
I'm right there with you.
Okay, good. Yeah. Oh my gosh, we might have the same guy.
No, you're good.
Okay, right. Well, let's start. Do you want to kick off, since you've kind of like
already said that I'm going with the most powerful fade in the game, and it's Jon Rahm. He won on this course 2 years ago. He's been great all year. Masters, Kapalua, just so solid. I mean, the guy owns Top Golf stock. I mean, give me a break. I mean, the guy's so rich, it's unreal. I love it. I think he just did that. I think they announced that he owns Top Golf stock. That's kind of cool. Hey, I own part of that. Jon Rahm, of course, is going to be back on his game this week. Diane, he hits that super power fade. He is so pissed off with himself that he played poorly in Memphis. And he is if you rank people's games, someone said, well, what do you think about Jordan Spieth? How do you rank his game? Well, the first thing I rank is not his swing, not his this, that, or the other. Probably the first thing I rank is what does he have inside of him? That's probably number one with Jordan Spieth. And number two might be his chipping. Number three might be his attitude. But when I think about Jon Rahm, number one would be his competitiveness, and I think that he's easy to pull for, and in my opinion, and of course he has the game to back it up. He has all the tools needed. He's just had an off week. He had 4 weeks off before last week, so a little rusty. Second at the Open Championship behind Brian Harman. Going back to a place is very difficult. A major champion, U.S. Open champion, Masters champion. It's natural for me, Diane, to take the guy that I think is going to win the whole show. So you can just put me down for Jon Rahm probably this week and next week.
And you have taken him since the very start of the year. So as you say, why stop? And, you talk about all that, the money and the power and just the superstardom. His wife still makes him sandwiches when he goes out and competes every round. And if he could have one thing on the whole PGA Tour, it's a toilet on each hole.
My wife last week that she used to make the sandwiches for me, so that she was first. Okay.
I love it. Okay, so you're taking Jon Rahm, who's third favorite at the top of the odds board, 9-1 this week, with only Scheffler and Rory ahead of him, as you would expect.
Those two guys are not putting well at all.
Yeah.
So that's why. And by the way, not to throw another wrench into the whole fire, whole thing that I don't like about the playoffs. Does it even matter if Rahm finishes third this week or second and the other two? Because it's not going to matter until next week anyway. And that's what we're talking about. Are we actually trying to handicap this week the FedEx Cup champ, or are we doing it for this second week of the playoffs? Yes, we are. But it feels like we're sort of starting to rank our way towards the FedEx Cup champ here.
Yeah. Okay, great. Right, so Jon Rahm is your pick. We talked about Tommy Fleetwood. I said I was on a seesaw. It was a balancing act between Fleetwood and one other. And I've been on Fleetwood so much, and I hope he wins this week. I really do. But I'm going to pick Max Homa as my outright favourite this week. Now, when you look at players who are trending in the right direction, and that's what we do, and this is such a pivotal point in the season, Homa's the guy. He's just finished 21st, 12th, 10th, and 6th in his last 4 starts. So there's your trend right there. I was looking last week in Memphis. He gained strokes in all areas of his game, and he is still within the top 10 in the FedEx Cup standings. I think he dropped like 2 places, but he's 8th in strokes gained total for the season. And I mean, look at that. Best stat for the field this week. He's 5th in strokes gained putting. His worst stat, right? I see that it's off the tee. And off the tee is going to be a big one, because when I looked at the 2020 stats, the like top 4 guys were all within the top 10 off the tee.
But in 2020 was in the top 6 in drive for the week.
But,
yes.
So looking at that is season long. But
he has potential though. We saw what he did at Riviera. I'm with you.
Yeah, well, but if you look at his last 6 events, he's gained almost 5 strokes on the field off the tee. So that part of his game is good right now. And you mentioned Riviera. He won at Torrey Pines. We know we've got a tough course this week, and Homa has played well and won on tough courses before. So I really like it. He played great last week, as I said, and finished 6th. And at 25-1, I am going to take Max as my outright favourite this week.
I don't blame you. Honma has been in the doldrums for most of the summer, and I think I would attribute that to 2 things. One would be he had a great start to the season, wins, and then he had a baby, and nobody knows more about babies than you. and there's a lot that comes with it. And it's just your time gets spread out. But it seems now that HOMA, his life is aligned in a certain way where his golf is coming back around into the picture right at the right time.
Yeah, and
Has a lot to,
your life.
family has a lot to do with tour success.
And I've seen that his son Cam has been traveling with them, and they've been all over the place. And you get in a rhythm. I think our sons are only a couple of days apart, so we're in a good rhythm now too. So it's
my anniversary. I was texted twice yesterday. My anniversary of my PGA victory was 28 years ago yesterday.
Wow.
So knew I was having a good day yesterday until I was really having a good day.
That's so great.
And the highlight of that day was, and I went into my workshop and saw the trophy with my daughter Annie, who's now going to have a baby. She was a baby, so there you go.
You're going to be Grandpa Elk. I cannot wait for this.
There's no doubt.
So good. Okay, then. So outright winners this week. You're taking Jon Rahm at 9-1. I have Max Homa at 25-1. So ones to watch, guys with slightly higher odds. I know that yours is going to be higher, obviously. My guy's 35-1 this week. I thought he was going to be higher, I'll be honest, but I'm going to roll with him at 31.
Lay it on me. Lay the story on me.
Okay. So I've got a guy here who was outside the top 50 last week. He went from 57 to 47, and he returns to a course that he played well at in 2020 when he finished in a tie for third. I'm going with HIDEKI Matsuyama at 35-1, 30-1, round about there. So that's quite nice. But yeah, as we said, two guys moved into the top 50, and Matsuyama was one of them. He's had a really volatile season on the greens, and you can see that. Worst stat, he's 45th out of 50 guys in strokes gained putting this week. But it was better last week, and his off the tee numbers and approach stats have remained strong. Look at that as well. Strokes gained around the green, he's 5th in the field this week. Tee to green last week, he was 2nd, and he was 3rd in total putts. So that was really encouraging to me as to where his game is right now, bearing in mind he played well last week and made that big jump when he had to. So I'm kind of going off the Adam Scott model from last year. Remember, I picked Adam Scott to do well at the Wyndham and get into the playoffs and then make it all the way to the end, and he did. So maybe Hideki's going to be my Adam Scott from last year, and he can make the jump into the top 30 this week with a really, really good performance. So HIDEKI Matsuyama, 30-1. I'm going to take him as my one to watch.
Yeah, whenever I think of Matsuyama, I think, of course, Masters champion. Yeah. Our producer is Japanese, and I know I've been to Japan many times with him included, and I know the 3 biggest tournaments in Japan ever, he's won them. Hideki, yeah. He won the Masters, and then he won the Hawaiian Open where he hit that towering 3-wood in the playoff that landed like 2 feet from the pin, and then he won the Zozo over there where he hit another 3-wood on the towering 3-wood into the last hole and made another eagle to win that. Matsuyama is all about rhythm and his pause at the top of his swing and sort of getting in that mode of greens in reg and driving it straight and then putting okay. He's sort of the Scotty Scheffler before Scotty Scheffler was. We all didn't realize that Scotty Scheffler was so good tee to green.
Yeah.
Footwork's crazy and he's all over the show. But it took a year of all of us watching Scheffler to realize 2 things. One, he's unreal from tee to green. He's first in green, first in driving, first in approach, first in chipping, but very average in putting. And there he is at the top of the board, 1 or 2 player in the world. Okay. Same thing with Matsuyama. He hasn't quite sustained it as long as Scheffler, but it took us a long time to realize that sort of that model was emerging, which is excellent, tee to green game like Matsuyama. Yeah. Average putting. When Matsuyama gets it going on the greens, then we're talking about the trophies. Anyway, my player, I'm not taking a flyer here. I'm by no means. I'm serious about this pick, but I'm looking for someone that has a little in the tank. And this man has played good all year. Power fade. I'm looking for the Dustin Johnson, Jon Rahm model up here at Olympia Field. Someone that hits the ball left to right and far naturally. Almost was right there at the PGA, played good at the US Open, near the final group at the Masters, won Memorial, played good at the British Open. I'm talking about Viktor Hovland. Viktor Hovland still has tons in the tank. Tom Watson, years ago, sort of didn't win. Didn't win. They sort of labeled him as a guy who wasn't going to win. I don't know if Hovland's going to finish up like Tom Watson, but I think Hovland's going to keep coming. You know, when he was at Oklahoma State and he was in there with Matthew Wolff got all the accolades, even though Hovland won the U.S. Amateur at Pebble Beach. But Hovland was underneath Wolff. Well, now that's all flipped. Hovland's a star. Wolff's still good, but he's had all kind of other things to talk about. I'm picking Hovland this week, Diane. He could win this tournament, get 2,000 points, and he could win the FedEx Cup easy. He's that good a player. He's been in the heat all year, not worried about the heat. He can handle it.
I like it. Yeah, great pick. So you're taking Viktor Hovland at 16-1, and I have Hideki Matsuyama at 30-1. Okay, dark horse. It's hard to call them that this week.
Well, we're calling it someone that's out that wants to be in.
I'm coming in. I'll start with mine because you just said Hovland's still got a lot in the tank. My biggest worry with this guy is that he is going to be fatigued and running out of juice in the tank because he's played a lot and he's played well. So there's been a lot of highs for this guy, and he is not within the 30.
I hurt my knee when he started playing, and my knee's better already. So that's how far back your pick is.
So he's 40. He's been playing a lot. He's 43rd in the FedEx Cup standings right now. So obviously he has to have a great week to move into the top 30. Top six finish.
You need top six. Your and my player has to get probably top 5 or 6 to get him to 1,550 points.
Okay. Well, I am taking JT Poston. we picked him every week, but for very good reason. He's been playing so well right now. Look at JT up to 40th in the world, which is great. 60-1. I actually found him at 18-1. No, 80-1. I'm looking, he's made 18 cuts this season. But here's what I love about JT. Yes, he's played a lot lately, but his game's been very solid. 4 top 7s in his last 6 starts. He finished 25th in Memphis last week. And we've talked about his worst stat, how good everything else is in his game. Approach, in putting, he's dialed in right now. He knows what's on the line this week. So if there was ever a week where he knows that here's the area that I have to improve on if I want to make it into the top 30, it's that off the tee stat. So we're maybe pushing it a little bit with JT Poston this week, but come on, if he has one more good week this week and then obviously puts him in a great position to play at Eastlake and gets all the benefits that come with that. So I'm going to keep going with him and take him anywhere between 60 and 80-1 JT Poston this week.
Yeah, and we're having a bit of fun with these picks of guys that are outside jumping in. We already talked about that. The focus this week, and you'll see it on CBS this week, is going to be between 25th and 35th. There's not going to be any volatility at all. The points, it's just not going to happen. And that's the way it is. I'm picking Cam Davis. I predicted he would go from outside to inside last week. He was 65th starting last week, and he jumped into 44th or 5th, probably on your board right there. His best stat is driving. He's a great swinger of the club. I'm going to just keep riding Cam Davis. I think he's got some skills, Diane, he wants to show off, and he would have to have another great. He finished 6th last week in Memphis. I'm looking for Cam Davis from outside to jump in. As I said, there's only going to be about 3 players outside of the top 30 that jump in, and 3 that are in are going to go out. That's just the way it is with the points on the way that the tour has got this set up. But nonetheless, it's going to be a great week. I'm looking forward really to seeing this golf course. I love seeing courses that are so hard. I love seeing these long iron second shots into these courses, small greens, undulating. It's going to be great.
Look at us both picking the two guys who were outside the top 50 and moved in. And it's momentum, and momentum plays a huge role at this time of year. Lucas Glover is an amazing example of that with his back-to-back wins. So, yeah, I mean, what do you think about him? Do you think that he's going to have enough in the tank to keep going? And, you know, sitting at number 4, we're going to see him playing at Eastlake. You know, what's Glover going to achieve over the next 2 weeks?
Well, I was talking to a good friend of mine today, and we were talking about this event coming up, and now we went from 70 tour players now to 50. And if you like your Crown or your whiskey and soda, there's not much soda left in the glass anymore. Now it's almost all whiskey, meaning there's only 50 really good players left out there. So it's tough for the guys down below to push up against the top, Diane. And that's just natural. I mean, there's players on tour that are better than others. So there's not a lot of whiskey, there's not a lot of soda left in the glass this week up in Illinois, Diane. And there'll be even less to get to Atlanta. As we know, we're looking at the top 3 with Rory, Scotty Scheffler, and Jon Rahm. Hard to push up through those 3 guys.
Yeah. Well, we're going to see a great course this week, a real tough tester, and we're going to see great fans.
We need that good course this week, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, you know what the Chicago sports fans are like? They're going to be out there having a good time and enjoying themselves, and it's going to get loud, and I can't wait. So I agree with you. Yeah, not the most exciting week in the FedEx Cup playoff format as it stands right now. Next week it's all different because we have everyone on a staggered scoring system to start, and we'll give you all the information on that. And someone's going to be obviously winning the FedEx Cup next week. But yeah, we're all in on Olympia Fields this week. Enjoy it. We're going to be watching to see the small group of guys who can move inside the top 30 or fall out of the top 30. And hopefully it's a good week for all of our picks as well. Thank you for watching and for listening to the Tour Report. And we will be back next week for the Tour Championship.